In the last section, we try to understand more about the reaction or the way in which the consumers react to changes in the price of a product. And the way we have been building up our understanding of the consumers or the demand side of this model is that first of all, we had our law of demand, which simply told us that look, if price increases, the quantity demanded will fall and vice versa. Then in the last section, we started off by saying that the limitation of this law of demand is that it's just a directional concept. It just tells you the direction of change in quantity demanded when prices change, but it doesn't tell you anything about the amount of change in quantity demanded. It doesn't tell you by how much will the quantity demanded change when prices change. And to get an insight into this magnitude of change of quantity demanded, we learned about this whole idea of price elasticity of demand of a product, which we said is a way of measuring the responsiveness, the amount of change in quantity demanded when the price of a product changes. And basically what we do in PED is we compare the percentage change in quantity demanded with the percentage change in price, and then we use the terms of elastic where the quantity's percentage change is more than price, and we say the demand is inelastic when the percent change of quantity demanded is less than the percentage change of price. So that is the sort of way in which we study and build a theoretical way of thinking of the consumer's behavior or reaction to changes in the price of a product. Now what we want to do is we want to look at the details of the producer's behavior to changes in the price of a product. Now the analysis is very similar to all the detail that we have built about the consumers. Similar in the sense that we use the same concept of elasticity, we use the same terminology. But as far as the supply is concerned, remember that first of all, instead of law of demand, we have our law of supply, which tells us how the producers react in terms of the change in quantity supplied when the price of a product changes. And law of supply, remember, simply tells us that if the price increases, the quantity supplied will also increase, the producers will produce more and vice versa. Again, remember, always assuming everything other than price is constant. Now, as was the case with law of demand, similarly, the law of supply, its limitation, its problem is that it's only a directional concept. It just tells us whether quantity supplied will increase or decrease given a change in price, but it doesn't say anything about the magnitude of change in quantity supplied. It doesn't tell us whether this quantity supplied will increase just a little bit or a lot. And therefore, to get an insight into by how much does the quantity supplied react or respond to changes in price, we introduce the concept of price elasticity of supply. Now, the story is very, very similar to what you learn in PED. Just remember, we are talking about the producers. We are talking about the price elasticity of supply. So instead of comparing the quantity demanded with changes in price, which we did when we were talking about price elasticity of demand, when we are going to talk about price elasticity of supply, we are going to compare the percentage change in quantity supplied with the percentage change in the price of a product. So you can think of the same imaginary market for mobile phones. So let me just give you a numerical example so you can clearly sort of understand what we are talking about here. So in the market of mobile phones, remember we said that initially, let's assume the price of mobile phones is 100 per unit, and then we said let's assume the price increases to 140. Now this time we are talking about the producers, so we are going to focus on the quantity supplied of the product, and let's assume initially it's the same 10,000 units. Now since price has increased, the law of supply, remember, tells us the quantity supplied will increase. So let's choose any number which is bigger than 10,000. So let's assume quantity supplied increases to 17,000. Now this is where, if we have to now think about whether this supply is responding a lot or a little, whether the supply is elastic or inelastic, we are going to compare the percentage change in quantity supplied with the percentage change in price. And the way we formally define all these things is that we say that given a change in price of a product, if the quantity supplied this time, remember, if we observe that it changes a lot, that is where we would consider the supply of the product this time to be elastic. Again, a lot of change, remember, simply means when we observe that the percentage change in quantity supplied is greater than the percentage change in price. On the other hand, if you observe that given a change in price, if quantity supplied changes, but if it changes just a little bit, that is where we say that the supply of the product is inelastic. It's unlike a rubber band. It does not respond, it does not change a lot when the price of a product changes. And then of course you have the in-between middle case where we say if the quantity supplied of a product changes proportionately with the price, so proportionate change in quantity supplied, that is where we say the supply of the product is unitary elastic. This is where the percentage change in quantity supplied is equal to the percentage change in price. And in elastic case, let us write that down over here. The percentage change in quantity supplied if it is less than the percentage change in price. Now, in terms of the economic meaning, again, remember that elastic supply this time means the producers of the product, and they are sensitive, they are touchy, they are responsive to changes in price. As an example, think of when the government announces a decrease in the price of petrol. Suddenly, you won't find petrol at most of the petrol pumps. They just stop selling. They reduce the quantity supplied quite a lot. They respond. They are sensitive to this fall in price. So that would be an example of an elastic supply. Whereas in elastic supply, on the other hand, this time think of the hands of the producers as being tied. The producers are in a tight spot in the sense that if the price of a product changes, then the producers, they can't change the quantity supplied a lot. So here as an example, think of any agricultural product. Think of rice. If today the price of rice falls or increases, the farmers, they will bring pretty much whatever they have already sown, which will come up as a crop in, let's say, 6-7 months. That is what they will bring to the market. They can't change the output suddenly because prices are changing. So agricultural commodities, they usually have inelastic supply. Farmers, they need quite a lot of time before they can react in terms of whether they will bring more or less to the market given a change in price. Anyhow, we will talk more about why agricultural commodities have an elastic supply and what's the problem that it leads to. That is an important thing. But now let me just give you the maths of this whole concept of price elasticity of supply, which is again we can do very quickly because it's the same ideas, the same concepts that we used in price elasticity of demand. We just modify them and apply to the producer side. So mathematically, remember that we can calculate the price elasticity of supply of a product by this time dividing the percentage change in quantity supplied with the percentage change in the price of the product. Now again, you need to know the meaning of the sign and the absolute value of the price elasticity of supply. As far as the sign is concerned, you see, let's go to this example that we have built here. We are saying the price has increased from 100 to 140, and as a result, the quantity supplied is increasing. Now, as far as supply is concerned, remember the law of supply already tells this to us, that if the price will increase, the quantity supplied will also increase. Now in that case, if you apply this formula, the percentage change of quantity by the percentage change of price, you will end up dividing a positive over a positive. So you will get an answer which is also positive. Now the only other possibility is that perhaps the price of a product falls, and in that case, the quantity supplied, it will also decrease. So that means the only other possibility is that you will end up dividing a negative by a negative, which will again give you an answer that is positive. So PES, therefore, remember, it's always going to be positive. Its sign is always going to be positive, and that simply reflects your law of supply. That reflects the fact that if price increases, the quantity supplied increases, and if price falls, the quantity supplied will also fall. So you will get a positive sign of PES always. Now, as far as the absolute value is concerned, again, we use the same concepts that we use when we studied the price elasticity of demand. That is, we start off by thinking about the first key value of price elasticity of supply when it is equal to 1. Now again, we are dividing two numbers here. The answer can be only equal to 1 if we divide two same numbers. That is, if PES is equal to 1, then according to this formula, the percentage change in quantity supplied must be equal to the percentage change in price. So PES of equal to 1 therefore tells us the supply must be unitary elastic. On the other hand, again let me write down the formula of PES, which is equal to, remember this time, the percentage change in quantity supplied by the percentage change in price. Now the only way this answer can come out to be greater than 1 is if you divide a larger number by a smaller number, which would mean in this case in terms of economic meaning that you will end up having a percentage change in quantity which is larger than the percentage change in price. Only then PES will be greater than 1. Now percentage change of quantity, if it is larger than the percentage change of price, we also know that supply is said to be elastic. And then we have the final third case where, again let me write this formula down first of all, percentage change in quantity supplied over the percentage change in price. Now the answer can only be less than 1 if you divide a smaller number by a larger number, which would mean inelastic supply, because that would imply the percentage change of quantity is smaller, it's lesser than the percentage change of price. Only then the value will be less than 1. So less than 1 implies inelastic supply. Now you can write all of these things over here as well. So elastic supply, remember the value of PES will turn out to be greater than 1. Unitary, and let me just write there. Unitary elastic supply, this is where the value of PES would turn out to be equal to 1, and inelastic would be where the value of PES turns out to be less than 1. So those are the basics of price elasticity of supply that you need to know, and in the next video I will explain to you how you can think of this idea graphically and how you can look at the supply curve and tell whether the supply is elastic or inelastic. And then we are going to talk about the determinants of price elasticity of supply in a very specific way. So that and all other things coming up in the next videos.